I'm experimenting today and I'm going to take you along for the ride. It's something that I've been thinking about for a very long time. I love ramen. Ramen is normally made with a pork broth and egg noodles and lots of other bits and pieces inside. I love Jewish chicken soup, and I am going to try and, do a fusion. I'm going to use chicken stock as my base. Instead of noodles, I'm going to make matzo balls, but I'm going to use Asian spices. Before I start, I just want to talk to you about one of the ingredients I'm planning on using is schmaltz. So schmaltz is chicken fat. So whenever I roast a chicken, when it comes out the oven, I pour the fat off and I keep it. Another example of schmaltz is, you can see here, this is homemade stock. On the top, that's the fat. That is incredible flavour. I'm keeping that, and I'm actually going to use that in my ramen. So if you are making this, if you can possibly be bothered, I would say to make your own chicken stock, because you're then going to get this, and also you can't beat homemade stock. I'm not going to give you measurements because this is a test run. Once I've tested it out, I will be able to write a proper recipe. This is matzo meal. It's a really sort of coarse, it's basically crushed up matzos, and matzos are the crisp bread things that we have at Passover. So I'm going to do a generous bit of salt. I've got some onion powder, which always goes hard in the thing, but I'm going to do a little sprinkle of onion powder. I've got some garlic granules. I'm going to do a little spritz of that. Now, I've got a little bit of ground cumin, not what you would normally put in a matzo ball, but remember, this is going to be an Asian fusion. So in goes a little bit of ground cumin, and I'm going to also chop up some fresh coriander in there. I'll just mix that together with a fork. And then I'm going to add a tablespoon and a bit more of the schmaltz. I'm also going to add a teaspoon of baking powder. Now, normally when you make matzo balls, you whip up the egg whites and you fold those in, and that's the thing that helps make them light and fluffy, but it's a bit of a faff. So you can cheat by, so I'm putting in about, do I want half a teaspoon? I might just do a little bit more. I'm cheating by putting in baking powder. I like to use white pepper when I'm doing Asian style cooking because it's got a little bit more heat to it. Next thing I'm going to be doing is beating the eggs, and then we'll mix this all together. So I've beaten the eggs. I'm going to pour that in along with very finely chopped fresh coriander. If you are making traditional matzo balls for chicken soup, you would use onion and garlic powder. You would also use some, you can get like dry soup, chicken soup powder. You can do that anyway if you haven't got schmaltz. And if you haven't got schmaltz, because that's going to give it this lovely big chicken kick. If you can't use schmaltz, you can replace that with some oil, a tablespoon of oil, but you need that fat. Okay, so that's all mixed together. I'm only doing a small quantity because it's a test. It could be disgusting, who knows? I'm going to put this in the fridge for half an hour. This is where you can get creative with your broth. So obviously with homemade stock, there's no salt in it. So it's a great starting point. I'm going to put my stock in there. I want to add as much as I can to try and give it Asian flavours. So I keep lemongrasses in the freezer for days like this where I'm experimenting. They keep very well in the freezer. I'm just going to soften it with my So that smells gorgeous, that can go in whole. I've got some ginger, and I'm going to, you haven't got to peel it or anything, I'm just simply going to cut off a couple of slices. Just 3 slices of ginger. I've got some dry shiitake mushrooms, always worth having as a store cupboard. They are little umami bombs. I always put them in my stocks, and if I'm making stews and stuff like that, they are a fantastic umami bomb. I've got some dried red chilies. These are Kashmiri chilies, so they're not that hot. I'm going to pop those in. What else have I got? I've got some kaffir lime leaves. Again, you can buy these from Asian supermarkets, Chinese supermarkets, and they keep forever in the freezer. So I'm going to put some of those in. I'm not going to hold back. There we are. And lastly, for the salty element, again, this is another ingredient I always have in the fridge. I've got some miso. Now I'm going to start I'm not going to put a huge amount in. Right, so I'm going to heat this up, and when it's warm we can roll out the balls, and I'm going to go away now and just write down everything I've just done before I forget it. I filmed it. I don't have to write it down, I can just watch this back. So the secret to a good matzo ball is don't overwork it. So I'm kind of just pushing them together into a ball shape very lightly. You don't want to overwork them. When I do write the recipe, you'll probably think I'm giving quite a large quantity of the broth. It's because sometimes with matzo balls, people will cook them separately, just in boiling water, but I want these balls to take on the flavour of that broth. I have added, actually I tasted it a little while ago and it needed more salt, so I've put in some fish sauce, and oh my god, it's just taken it to another level. So yes, and the reason you need a lot of broth is these absorb an awful lot, excuse me, of liquid. You can see I'm doing these about the size of a walnut. I've decided in my broth I'm going to leave all the aromats in so that these can benefit from that, and the broth will become even more Asian in style. And I'm going to go and, well, I'll go and get it. So here's the broth. This has been cooking for half an hour on a very low light. I've tasted it, it's fantastic. I'm just going to drop the dumplings in. I hope this works. I think it's pretty inspired. What I'll do at the end is I'll use a strainer and we'll take everything out so that it's just broth left, and then pop the dumplings back in, minus all of the other bits. So I'm going to put this back on the cooker. I'm going to cover the pot with a lid. It's on the absolute lowest light, and I'm going to cook it for 30 to 40 minutes. It's finished. Look at this, it's absolutely gorgeous. I need to work on the recipe a little bit just to stop the balls falling apart. Some of them did fall apart, but the flavour, oh God, it really works. I'm just going to taste a ball.